What's up, boys and girls? This is Spit Logic, and today I want to talk about the Mark II. So, in videos past, I have described the Mark II as a perfect blend between the analog and the digital. And when I made that statement earlier, and the reason why I'm talking about this now is because, since I started talking about this Mark II, my channel has exponentially grown, and a lot of the content that I have has been centered around beat making, specifically using the Mark II for beat making. And someone came in my comments, I think the guy's name was Muppet Pastor, and he made the comment, "How is this analog?" And I saw it. It seemed like it was kind of a cheap jab or just kind of a trolling kind of jab. But when he said it, it took me back a little bit because I'm thinking to myself, well, is the Mark II an analog machine? Are the previous SP44s, are they analog machines, or have they all been digital machines? And if that's so, is the statement that I made earlier that this is the perfect blend between the analog and the digital, is that a correct statement? So of course I did some digging and I did some research. I looked at a lot of different sites, did a lot of Google searching, and tried to really determine what is the SP44 MKII. Even when I Google search analog beat making machine or analog drum machine or analog sampler, the SP44 came up in every single one of those particular searches, specifically because they came up as part of a tag associated with a company that is selling the SP44 Mark II. So again, I'm thinking and I'm processing this, and I'm thinking to myself, it's also a part of the marketing. This is a part of what we are being sold, what we're being promoted. This is being promoted as an analog machine. So doing a little bit of searching and just diving down into it, what does the term analog mean? What does analog mean? So when we're talking about analog in its most basic form, in its most basic usage, the term analog really is talking about energy. It's talking about inputs and outputs. Specifically, you're talking about electricity or the electric signals. When you're dealing with electricity is kind of what is the source of most of the energy that we have that surrounds us. So when you talk about frequencies, when you talk about power generation, you're talking about analog because there is a power dynamic associated with it. And when you talk about an analog instrument is not only the input of a certain amount of power or a certain frequency of power. Analog is also the output of that power over a stretch of time, over a period of time. So analog can be looked at as the input or the existence of power and frequency over a period of time. So an analog instrument or any sort of analog device, it takes that power input or that power generation, that frequency, and it takes it in. And what comes out of it from that analog input is where you get what we now know as synthesizers. So an analog synthesizer takes a frequency, it takes an electronic signal, and it manipulates that signal into different forms. So you have different waves, the sine wave, triangle, square. Those are some settings you've probably seen, but it's all about how those analog signals are filtered through to create a different sound or a different signal. So if we're just talking about that, if we're talking about the way that instruments or the way that an electric signal is manipulated and changed, molded, crafted into a sound, the Mark II is not analog at all. The Mark II is different because the SP404 Mark II is a sampler first. It is not a synthesizer. The Mark II is also not only a sampler, but it is digital by nature. It is a machine that it has a computer, has an onboard computer. It has firmware. It has certain programming. It does inputs and outputs from the knobs. So you can really actually say that the Mark II, the sampler itself, is a digital sampler. But it's not digital in the sense of me using it on a computer program such as Logic Pro. The difference between using it on a DAW versus using it in the actual singular machine is that my Mark II can only do what it is built to do, whereas a computer is built to take in different programs that simulate certain things and certain items, i.e. Logic Pro is a digital representation of something like a Mark II, something like a beat making machine. And at the same time, my computer also does email, my computer can surf the internet, my computer can make movies. It can do a lot of things digitally that exist in the real world, or what we always kind of term as analog, the analog world. So how does this concept, or how has this concept of the SP or any sort of beat making machine, why is that so closely associated with the term analog? I think it's because the way that we've been brought up and the way that we've been thinking, analog is kinetic. It is a real life structure or thing that I can touch and feel with my hands. It is a record, a CD, a tape we look at as analog, as opposed to a digital file as an MP3 or a WAV file. And again, when we talked about that definition before, we talk about, the inputs and outputs over a period of time. When you look at a cassette, when you look at a CD or a record, it is layered out in space and time. You can, if you lay the record down at the beginning, that is the beginning part in space and time, and you have to pick up the needle and go to the next part of it. A digital file itself does not exist in a linear fashion. It exists as ones and zeros, which can exist at any point or any space in any time. It doesn't degrade over time the same way that a cassette does, or even a CD. It is the same, and when you copy it, it is the exact same replica. You can purposely degrade the quality of something that you digitally copy, but with something like a record or something like a cassette, copying it over and over again, it degrades the inputs over time. So I guess when we're talking about, beat making machines, especially with the way that they're being developed now, I guess saying it's a bridge between the analog and the digital is probably not the correct term. I think it's the bridge between the kinetic and the digital, which makes a little bit more sense. I do think that, especially by using the Mark II, it has made me a little bit more sensitive or more aware of just music making in general, not just beat making, but music making in general. I also think that going forward, my terminology is definitely going to change. I can't really say it's analog unless I'm using a synthesizer. Really, maybe it's more of the acoustic or more of the, I don't even know what the term would be. I mean, kinetic, the physical, the textile. I don't know. I think the terminology probably has to change, but like all languages, you can say one thing and it have an original meaning behind it. And now if it becomes just a common theme, commonly understood by all people within a certain community, then that just makes it acceptable. Because, I mean, this little channel, this little video is not going to make people change what they view as analog or digital. I think most beat makers that you ask about the Mark II or any of the beat making machines, they're going to say this is an analog beat making machine. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share those thoughts. I'm still on this journey of beat making. I'm still, learning stuff every day. And it's weird because under any other circumstance, I would not be trying to research anything like this. But something about, just purchasing this Mark II and, just watching a lot more videos and a lot of other YouTubers that deal with this machine and the different ways that they choose to share their experiences on YouTube is just really compelling to me. And I am really just excited and feel blessed to be, a part of such a kind-hearted community. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think down below. I appreciate the listen, appreciate your ears and your eyes. And until next time, peace.